Asymmetric encryption is referred to as public key cryptography. One of the key features is that the asymmetric key encryption method uses a public key and a private key. That is, it encrypts using a key pair. Using digital signatures, key distribution is pretty simple because once the public key is distributed, then all the owner needs to do is to ensure that they retain the private key, retain their private key securely. Asymmetric key encryption is slow and only suitable for small amounts of data, such as authentication data or passwords and things like that, because it uses one key to encrypt and another key to decrypt, making it much slower than the symmetric key encryption, which simply uses one key to encrypt and decrypt. Asymmetric encryption can provide integrity, authenticity, and non-repudiation, and we'll take a look at all of that a bit later. When we talk about confidentiality, how can we derive confidentiality from asymmetric key encryption or cryptography? Well, let's say the ladder back down is sending a message to Black and Scott, and the message is confidential, highly confidential. So what the message is simply saying is things can only get better if you keep trying. The ladder back down would get a hold of Black and Scott's public key. Remember, I've mentioned that the public key can be published anywhere online. With e-commerce sites and banks, and I'll show us this later, you can actually view it in the browser once you navigate to their website. So we get a hold of Black and Scott's public key, and we use that to encrypt that message. So here's the plain text: things can only get better if you keep trying. I've encrypted it with Black and Scott's public key to ensure confidentiality, to ensure that only Black and Scott can read this message. Once I've encrypted it, it produces ciphertext, which is here, which starts with OBR. That message is then sent along to Black and Scott's email box, and Black and Scott then uses their private key to decrypt that message, turning it back into plain text. Because I've encrypted that message using Black and Scott's public key, the only key that can be used to decrypt that message is Black and Scott's private key. And that's why and how asymmetric encryption ensures confidentiality. As long as the key used to encrypt the message is the key of the recipient, they will be able to use their private key to decrypt that message, and only they will be able to do that. So again, an advantage of asymmetric key encryption is you don't need to distribute your private key, just distribute the public key. The disadvantage is that it's up to 1,000 times slower than symmetric encryption, simply because the process of using two keys makes this slower than symmetric key encryption, which uses one key. How can we authenticate the sender of a message with asymmetric key encryption? If I want to send a message from the ladder back down to Black and Scott, for BNS, Black and Scott to know that that message has come from me, they need to get a hold of my public key and seek to decrypt that message. And that means that I need to encrypt using my private key, the ladder back down's private key. So same message, things can only get better if you keep trying. Encrypt it using the ladder back down's private key. Here is the ciphertext. That ciphertext arrives with Black and Scott. They decrypt using the ladder back down's public key, which is available readily. And if that message is decrypted, then they can know for sure that only I could have encrypted that message, the ladder back down, because the ladder back down's public key is only able to decrypt any message sent that has been encrypted using the ladder back down's private key. Remember, we said that these are two keys in a pair. Here are some asymmetric key algorithms: DSA, RSA, ECC, El-Gamal, Diffie-Hellman, and NATSAC. RSA was created by these three individuals, and that's just, RSA just stands for the initials of these people's names, and it's used for digital signatures, which we'll talk about later. Asymmetric encryption, the ECC elliptical curve cryptography, is efficient, but it's only used for handheld devices. Usage is limited for handheld devices. What do hashing algorithms do? They use cipher to create a message digest or a hash function instead of encryption keys. And they're commonly used for passwords. So you type your password in a website, and that password is encrypted. And it's not encrypted using a public key or a private key, rather it's encrypted using ciphertext. And it's used for integrity verification. When you change your password, the hash will actually change. The hash will change. If you change a single letter in your password, the hash will change. So when you type in your password wrongly on a website or on your infrastructure as well, your network infrastructure, if you type in one character wrong, the system simply sees a hash function, but the hash will actually have changed. So hash algorithms are used for integrity and non-repudiation, and we'll talk about that. Digital signatures. Digital signatures actually authenticate the sender of a document. So what is a hash function? A one-way irreversible function which condenses plain text to a unique message digest. So let's take a look at my password here, or passphrase, or a phrase. Undefeatable 379 exclamation mark. The hash function processes that phrase or password, and it then produces this hash or this message digest, and it changes it to this. So this is just this phrase, undefeatable 379 exclamation mark, or password, that has actually been hashed. And it's given us this string of characters. If the phrase is changed, if I were to change that to undefeatable 397 exclamation mark instead of 379, the hash will change. It it won't simply change by one character here. It will totally change. And that's what our system sees. So when we type in a single letter incorrectly in our password, the hash function that the system receives in the back end is different and will get rejected. So asymmetric encryption provides integrity and non-repudiation. So a message applies a hash to it. The message and the hash is then encrypted using the sender's private key. The message plus the encrypted hash is then sent towards the recipient, and the recipient system compares the hashes. Compares the hash that has been sent here, the message plus the hash, it compares the hash to make sure that that hasn't altered. So if a man in the middle or a cyber criminal or a hacker were to actually have read that message in between it being transmitted from here, from the sender to the recipient, if they were able to decrypt and open it, as soon as they open the message, the hash changes. Just by opening the message, the hash changes. And so the recipient solution compares the hashes, and then the recipient actually will realize that the hash has changed, and so the message may have been altered or accessed en route. So asymmetric encryption ensures integrity in so much as the system will alert the recipient if the hash is different to what is being expected. And so that means integrity is retained. And because this message had been sent using the sender's private key, encrypted rather, using the sender's private key, they cannot now say, I did not send that message. If the message is decrypted successfully using the sender's public key. And that's where we say non-repudiation again. Because if the message has been encrypted using the sender's private key, the sender's public key would not be able to open it if it hasn't been decrypted using the private key of the sender. So asymmetric encryption provides integrity checking. So it checks to see if the hash function has been altered en route. That is, if someone has accessed the email or the message that is being sent, or if they altered it. An encrypted hash is the same as a digital signature. With a digital signature, a message is hashed using SHA-1 rather than using a key. And it's the hash rather than the message that is encrypted by the sender's private key, as we've just seen previously. RSA, asymmetric encryption algorithm, also encrypts the hash with the sender's private key. So the message is hashed using SHA-1, and then RSA encrypts the hash itself with the sender's private key. How do we protect data as it traverses the network? Well, all of these different protocols, IP, Internet Protocol, HTTP, UDP, FTP, File Transfer Protocol, convenient, but unsecure. They're not secure. And so when we refer to data in transit encryption, we're talking about how we secure our data and our information as they travel across the network. How we secure our files, how we secure our internet traffic. Now, many of us may have heard what we refer to as SSL, Secure Sockets Layer. Encryption-based internet security protocol, which ensures confidentiality, authentication, and integrity when communicating on the internet with our banks, when we're doing shopping online. Whilst a lot of us know about SSL, because we all see that yellow padlock or that padlock at the side of our web browser, whenever we're trying to access our banks, for example, or an e-commerce store online, we often see that padlock, which means that that site has been secured using SSL. TLS is a modern replacement for SSL. And if you visit a website that has implemented SSL or TLS, then it has HTTPS in its URL instead of HTTP. If the site hasn't implemented this security, this encryption, to enable you to communicate securely with that site, that's when you see this message saying this site is not secure. Are you sure you want to visit this site? So SSL encrypts data transmitted across the internet, and a man-in-the-middle attacker or traffic sniffer who tries to intercept any data that has been encrypted will only see ciphertext rather than plain text. So your credit card numbers, your debit card numbers, your passwords. If the website has been encrypted using SSL or TLS, then a man in the middle who tries to intercept your credit card details when you're actually entering that information into a secure site, into an encrypted site, will only see the ciphertext, but they will be unable to read your card details or your password. SSL will initiate an authentication process between your device and the server or the web server to ensure that both devices are legitimate. SSL also digitally signs data to provide data integrity. So it proves data integrity. If a site doesn't have an SSL certificate, then it cannot implement SSL. The SSL certificate will verify that the company or the owner of the website actually owns that website, and that any traffic between that website and an end user's device, yours and my device, will then be encrypted. The traffic will be encrypted between both devices. We'll take a look at an SSL certificate in a moment, but they're usually stored and displayed on the web by a web or application server. The website's public key information is included on the certificate. And that is what encrypts the communications link when you and I access Amazon or our banks and type in our passwords. Let's look at this example. So customer A navigates to Amazon.com on their PC or mobile device. Customer A's device will search for and view Amazon's public key. And that's what it uses to establish a secure encrypted connection with the web server. Customer A then feels secure enough to enter their credit card data. But if customer A were to receive a message, this site is not secure, they clearly would not enter their credit card data. And when customer A now enters that data is encrypted and scrambled into ciphertext. When the data now gets to Amazon's web server, the web server then uses its private key to decrypt the data that has been encrypted with its public key rather than private key. So the Amazon web server will use its private key to decrypt customer A's credit card data that has been encrypted with Amazon's public key that has been used to establish a secure encrypted connection at the onset of that transaction. So this is just repeating what I've just said there. And the aim is to get to a point where both parties, the end user device and Amazon's web server, for example, have a secure channel across which we can communicate. So let's take a look at how we can view a website's public key. If we navigate to Instagram.com, for example, at the side there, we'll see top left-hand corner of our browser, we'll see a padlock. If we click on the padlock, we can then see a group of text, and we simply select certificate. This certificate is literally Instagram's public key. We can see that it was issued to Instagram.com, which is a good start. We can see the certificate authority, that is DigiCert, using SHA-2, but it was issued by DigiCert. Some organizations actually have their own public key infrastructure in place, but they're not as trusted as going through a well-known and trusted certificate authority, including DigiCert. And that also tells us how long Instagram's public key is going to be valid for. Issued on the 2nd of May 2021 to the 1st of August 2021. If we look at the details, here is the serial number of the public key for Instagram. Algorithm uses SHA-2 and RSA. Can we see RSA that we mentioned earlier? 256-bit encryption. Again, here are the dates of validity. So that's where we can view a website's public key. We simply go to the browser, click on the padlock, and you can find all the information that you need about the public key, about their public key. And that is what your device searches for. When you go to Instagram, when you go to Amazon, when you go to your bank, it searches for that public key. And only when it finds a public key can it then establish, it will obtain a session key for that session. It will obtain a session key, and that establishes a secure session between both devices. Your device, your mobile phone or your laptop, and the Amazon or your bank's web server. What about email in transit? How do we actually secure emails when they're being sent? Well, we've got an open PGP protocol, pretty good privacy protocol as well. Global email communications encryption protocol. No licenses are actually required for this. So you can download these. An open PGP is the standard format for encrypted email messages, digital signatures, and certificates for public key exchanges for emails. Again, regulators may demand that we actually secure some of our private or personal information. If you work in a hospital, so hospitals, if they're sending patient records to GP surgeries, for example, that would need to be encrypted. They won't send that using plain text communications. Data in transit. Ipsec protocol, what is that used for? IP security protocol. That is used to establish encrypted connections between virtual private networks in particular. So if you work at home, but you need access to your office, for example, IPsec is what actually, that is the protocol that encrypts the communications between your broadband router and your company's router. So your virtual private network is encrypted using the IPsec protocol. So it encrypts any packets that you will send between your home router and your company's router network. So both networks, packets are encrypted, and it also authenticates the packet's origin. So if you're working from home, you may have been given, or your company, your IT team, InfoSec may have installed VPN software on your laptop or on your mobile device. That software will be encrypted using the IPsec protocol, which simply seeks to establish a secure connection to authenticate any traffic coming from your device to your corporate or company devices, and to also encrypt them as well. Authentication meaning that the protocol will ensure that the traffic is coming from your device and nowhere else. What do we use SSH for? Secure Shell Protocol. That is used for remote administrative purposes. So if a systems administrator is working from home, for example, they need access to their corporate network to administer the network, then the Secure Shell Protocol is what encrypts the remote login credentials so that the system administrator, username and password, for example, will not be transmitted in plain text. That will be transmitted after it has been encrypted using secure shell protocol. Data at rest encryption, that is data in storage, data on our USB sticks. We've got, for file encryption, for individual files, we've got Windows 10 encryption file system, EFS, we've got Xcrypt, and many others. If we're looking to encrypt our hard drives and our USBs, then we've got VeraCrypt, which replaced TrueCrypt many years ago. And we've also got Windows 10 BitLocker and other hard drive and USB encryption solutions. It's essential that we only use encrypted USBs anyway, because it's so easy to lose a USB stick. And if you don't want anyone to find that USB stick and then to access our data, simply buy an encrypted USB or have it encrypted at work. What are the different crypto attacks? Well, there are many crypto attacks actually. So I won't, please don't, please don't accept this as a given that these are the only ones, because there are many different crypto attacks out there. But pattern recognition is a method of crypto attacks where the cyber criminal will search for a pattern in an encrypted message. The most commonly used letter in the alphabet is said to be E, the letter E. And the most common word is the, THE. So once a cyber criminal has found all the E's, or a hacker has found all the E's, and then all the instances of the word the, they're well on their way to cracking the code. A brute force attack as well, whereby a hacker tries every possible combination against encrypted data to try to discover the key. So if we use a long key for encryption, just as it's recommended that we use passphrases instead of password. If we use a passphrase instead of a password, then we're less likely to experience a dictionary attack. If we use a long key for encryption, then that reduces the chance of key discovery.